Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ball Watching. It is 2024. Wow, 2020, 2024. And we are just starting this third now season of Ball Watching. Justin, it's crazy. I cannot believe that we're finally here, man. We took the last couple weeks, just kind of recharge, refresh a little bit. But man, dude, we're gearing up for what's going to be a very, very long season here. How excited are you?
I'm extremely excited. Yeah, I'll make the same joke I make every time, and I needed a break from you. We put the schedule together over break as well. A lot of fun things coming up this year, but we have so many games, so many episodes, previews, recaps, interviews, Copa America, all the tournaments that are going to go along with the regular season as well. But I think we're ready for it.
Donnie's ready for it. Donnie's in the comments saying, "Sup, everyone? What's up, Donnie? Happy New Year!" Yeah, we're ready to go, Justin. It looks like you put a little section here for us to get started. A little fun to be had here. Are you ready for us?
I did. Let me see. All right, hold on. You put me right on the spot. I didn't think we were jumping right into it. But here, let's do this, Jake. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
And so this is a little five-side real quick that we're going to do. And so it's a little bit different, though. So with this, Jake, this is going to be something that you're going to have to rank these guys in order of first to last of the top five. And so this is goals and assists in the 2023 MLS season. Let's see if you'll let me do this.
Okay. So I'm looking at Alan Pulido, Eddie Leuven, Ricky Puig, Brandon Vasquez, and Carlos Vela.
Yeah.
So I don't think Vela had a great season statistically. I want to say it was pretty down for him. So I'm going to put him in the 5 spot for now.
Okay. I'm going to move these around as you say it.
Yeah. Okay.
This is goals plus assists for the season.
Yeah. I am going to go Vasquez in the 3rd spot.
Okay.
I'm kind of tempted between Leuven and him in the 3rd spot.
And like you said, for anybody playing along, this is in alphabetical order. We have Alan Pulido, Edu Leuven, Ricky Puig, Brandon Vasquez, and Carlos Vela.
And I have to rank them goals to assists top to
bottom.
Goals
and assists combined for the 2023 season.
I think Pulido will be in the top 2 for sure. And I think Ricky Puig is as well. I am going to put Puig at 2 and Pulido at 1.
Okay.
Which puts Leuven at 4.
All right. So final answer.
I'm not confident in this at all. In fact, I could have it so wrong. But
so final answer. You got Pulido at 1, Puig at 2, Vasquez at 3, Leuven at 4, and Vela at 5.
So let me give my quick reasoning. Pulido, I know he scored a buttload of goals this season. So he must have had a couple assists to go along with that. Puig is the assist master. So he must have had a couple goals to go along with that. I know Vasquez had a decent season, nothing crazy. Leuven, we know, had both goals and assists in his locker. I only worry about disrespecting Leuven. He could be like a spot higher potentially in here. And Vela, I don't think he had the season. He had a big name, but I don't think he had a huge season. But prove me wrong, Justin. What do we got?
All right. Also, I'm going to give you one little more bonus point. What do you think the highest number of goals and assists between all these guys is?
Like
if you add them together, what do you think? If you said Alan Pulido, what do you think Alan Pulido had in total goals and assists?
Oh man, like 23.
Okay, let's see. Number 1, Carlos Vela with 21, 9 goals, 12 assists.
12 assists.
Think about who he's playing with up top, Mr. Dennis.
I know. Oh my God. Okay. Wow.
Number 2, Mr. Edu Leuven, 6 goals, 14 assists. That's what's stepping him up right there.
Yeah.
Number 3, Alan Pulido.
Wow.
Who do you think's 4 and 5? Do you think it's Vasquez or do you think it's Puig?
I think Puig is 4.
And 5, Mr. Vasquez.
Yeah, I knew Vasquez didn't have a year. Man, that was rough. I didn't get one right.
No, you didn't. You didn't. I think, you were pretty far off. We got Vela at 1, Leuven at 2, Pulido at 3, Puig at 4, and Brandon Vasquez at 5.
Rough. Okay, rough outing, but we can only go up from here, I guess. That was a good one.
Just a little switch up, so we don't have to do like the 5 and 5 and compare each other. We can just give a little taste tester for everybody.
We're getting some love across the pond here from our boy Chow out in the UK. Chow, welcome to the show. Thank you for your support. Hope all is well across the pond there. But let's jump into it here, Justin. We got a little bit of agenda. First, we're going to break down some really, really high-profile news for City, specifically Ail Jackson. Then we'll get into some of the big kind of star high-profile transfers we've seen to the MLS this past transfer window so far. And we're going to get into the CONCACAF Champions League. We kind of briefed over it last time, and I'm going to spend a little more time talking about it. And then all the updates from a City perspective that have gone on, a lot of transfer news and just updates we want to provide you all. So that's kind of loose agenda for today. But Justin, it's hard to not talk about this first, but we're going to anyway. We have to, because I think it's the biggest piece of news, and I think very, very unexpected when you ask me, honestly. But Ail Jackson, our very own number 10, winger, shifty, the hair, has been called into the U.S. men's national team camp. He's actually there right now as we speak. And just a little bit of context for everyone. So this is a men's national team camp. This isn't, the Olympic camp. This isn't a youth national team camp. This is the men's national team camp. So it's a big deal that he's called in. But I do want to say there's always a January camp. There's usually always a January camp for the U.S. men's national team. And typically they tend to use it by looking at a lot of domestic talent. Those that, haven't made the jump to Europe, there's really never any Europeans in this camp because they're playing. And it's not a FIFA window, so they don't have to be released. But usually it's kind of the guys that they don't jump off the page at you. Maybe they've been overlooked. Maybe they're late bloomers. But in this camp, it's a little bit different in that they've called in a lot of Olympic eligible guys, which we'll talk about. So I think there's a little bit more of an angle towards the summer here with the Olympics coming up, the first one we qualified for in forever. But all of that aside, what a dream come true for a guy like him. Unbelievable. I'm so happy for him.
It's awesome. And I think it's a lot of young guys like you were talking about. So 15 of these guys earned their first U.S. men's national team call-up. 17 are chasing their first ever senior team appearance as well as down there. And additionally, 13 players are age eligible, including AZ, to be in the Olympics, which would be absolutely awesome. The Summer Games will be in France this year, which FIFA limits players to be under the age of 23. So we're talking about that age exception. You have to be 23 for those games, except for 3 players on over that age are allowed to be on each squad. So that's something that AZ is definitely fighting for. And you mentioned it, Jake, like he's there now. It's a quick camp. He was called down there. The camp is only 8 days. It's in Orlando, Florida from January 8th to January 16th. So if you're listening to us tonight, he's only been there for 2 days so far. I guess 3 days since we're through the 10th. And then after the camp, they're going to decide on the final roster for a friendly against Slovenia on January 20th, which will be at Toyota Field in San Antonio, Texas.
So, yeah, you look at this. Yeah, we're seeing some comments. Yeah, Kevin, I agree with you. AZ is Olympic eligible, technically. So is Indy. So Indy, if you remember, was called into that camp a couple months back now. There was some great footage of him, just an all-around amazing guy. But back to AZ, I mean, this is a big chance for him. He hasn't really been on the radar, much at all. And now he's at a men's national team camp, potentially looking at the Olympics. I think best case for AZ, you go to camp, you impress, you get FaceTime with Greg Berhalter. The U23 coach is also there. He'll be the one coaching them over in France during the Olympics this summer. But FaceTime with Berhalter, show him what you can do, make that roster to go play in Toyota Field in San Antonio, to go play against Slovenia, get your first cap, and you come into City's preseason camp back to Florida just flying. The guy will be already fresh, in form, like ready and rearing to go. So selfishly, I love it because he's going to have basically an extra 2 weeks of jump start in a highly competitive environment. Worst case, I guess worst case is that he doesn't make the roster, but he stays in Florida and he joins our boys in camp, which is not that bad of a case at all. But I just, in terms of having a young guy experience, not that these guys are all a bunch of old, veterans, but being in an age group like that where everyone's vying for potential Olympic spots, you got to imagine it's going to be cutthroat, competitive, and I think ultimately a very, very good growing experience for him.
And not only that, but it's got to be a huge confidence boost for this guy. I mean, what did we get him from Minnesota for $175K in total? Now look what he is. He's literally, just because of the season he had with City and the opportunity that Lutz and Carnell gave him, now he's literally going to the U.S. men's national team camp in Florida with a bunch of other good names. So extremely excited, and congratulations to AZ there. The next segment that we have here, Jake, a lot of moving stars, I'd say, in and out of the MLS. One of the ones we had kind of already mentioned in our top 5 that I did not know was going to happen, but the biggest one that everybody's kind of been talking about already to join Messi and friends down in Miami is Luis Suarez, 37-year-old Uruguayan forward. Just for anybody that hasn't heard of him before, played with Messi at Barcelona from 2014 to 2020, 147 games played, 191 games played and 147 goals in those games. So he's scoring probably about 75% of the time when he was at Barcelona. Now Miami has 4 former Barcelona teammates, not guys that just played for Barcelona before, but have all shared the field in Barcelona together with Messi, Suarez, Sergio Busquets, and Jordi Alba.
I'm really interested to see how this move pans out. I think like everyone, everyone was at least baseline level fan when MSN was together at Barcelona with Messi, Suarez, and Neymar. He was the goal scorer in that group. I mean, Messi scored a lot, and so did Neymar, but he was the guy that, you put anything remotely close to a platter for him, he's putting it away. Just a ruthless finisher, also quite the menace of a player as well. And I say that I'm interested to see how this pans out because he is 37. It's not like he's scoring at that clip that he was before, and his best days are definitely behind him. But I can say that for most of the guys that are under Miami now that you just mentioned, Justin. So can Messi, who's still operating at a super, super high level, tap into Suarez and bring him back into some level of form that he's been in his past career? I think it's possible, but they're gambling with some older age players here because, God forbid, 1, maybe 2 of them get hurt in this long, lengthy season that we have in the MLS. They could be in some trouble because the depth isn't there to support some key injuries, and these guys aren't going to have a lot in those legs. You have to imagine, right?
No, I would agree. The one thing they did add more recently too, Jake, I think this was yesterday, and one that we did not include in here was Julian Gressel.
Yep.
They picked up from the Columbus Crew as well. So they are looking to build around. And what's the pitch? You already talked about it, or we've talked about it with Beckham. It's like they're asking him, like, oh, what are you going to pitch these big names to come? He goes, do you want to come to Miami? And now all you have to say to these other guys is, do you want to play soccer with Messi? There's no one that's saying no to this. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out because we've talked about it before. Just because you create these super teams doesn't mean you're going to have the chemistry to go on and win a cup.
And this is an elder super team too, so it's a little bit different that way. So do I think that the move for Suarez and even Gressel in that case makes them an instant, contender? I don't know. Talk to me middle of the season. I feel like for me, it's an extreme. It's either going to go really, really well or it's not going to go well. Honestly, that is my opinion. I don't think they end up like 4th, 5th in the Eastern Conference. I feel like they're either first or I don't know what's going to be happening to them, but I'm really interested. I'm all about it. And obviously we're playing them. So I'm really excited to see us head down to Miami.
I think it's going to go really well, Jake, unfortunately. And so do the books. If you want to bet on the MLS Cup winners for next season already, Miami is plus 350. Then you got LAFC at plus 600, who just signed another guy who we'll talk about here in a sec. Then you got Columbus Crew to repeat at plus 850. So, you know what? As we're already mentioning that, let's talk about this guy. LAFC just signed Hugo Lloris. For anybody that doesn't know his name as well, coming from overseas, 37-year-old World Cup winning French goalkeeper, played at Tottenham Hotspur in the English Premier League from 2012 to 2013. He has 145 caps for the French national team since 2008. That sounds like, that could be a lot of games. I looked it up. To put that in perspective, Tim Howard only has 121 U.S. men's national team caps. So he already has 24 more national team caps than Tim Howard did for us. What I would say is at least probably a year and a half of playing time. This guy's going to be pretty exceptional for LAFC.
I don't know if I agree that he's going to be exceptional. I think he's been on his way out in terms of his form for a couple of years now. It's easy for me to say because I'm an Arsenal fan and he was Tottenham's goalie. But they replaced him for a reason. He wasn't getting a sniff at the first team so far this season. And so it was an easy decision for him to go. But LAFC doesn't necessarily breaking the bank to have him either. They only have him on a 1-year deal. He might have an option for the next, but this isn't a break the piggy bank open and splash it like we kind of did for Berkey even though he's tied down to a TAM deal. But I think we are a lot more confident in what we were getting in Berkey. I don't know if LAFC feels the same, but their goalkeeping situation was not good last year. So am I taking a gamble by, putting away those two and then bringing in a guy that's won a freaking World Cup? I don't really feel like I'm gambling as much, especially for a year. So I think it'll be a fine deal for them. I don't think Lloris gives the same bump that we've gotten with Berkey, though.
No, I completely agree. If you look at that, I would say he's coming down. When you mentioned he's not even getting a sniff at the first team, let's also remember that is with Tottenham Hotspur in the English Premier League. Yeah. So I think it is quite different there. But I mean, they didn't do an awful job defensive. I mean, you could say it's to their defense as well. They only allowed 39 goals last year, which is 8th best in the MLS. So adding Hugo Lloris to a defense defense is already solid. Yes, they're losing Giorgio Chiellini, but I think it'll be a good add for them regardless, even if it is just for a year. Let's stick on the goalie train, though, Jake. I want to get your thoughts on this one because there's been a lot of drama the past couple of years on this. Zach Steffen coming back to the U.S. He's going to the Colorado Rapids, 28-year-old American goalkeeper coming back to the MLS after being with the Crew, who just won the Cup, from 2016 to 2019. He went to Man City in 2019, only had 2 appearances for them before being loaned out to Dusseldorf, shout out Iris, and for a season in 2020, and then into Middlesbrough in 2022 and 2023. But what are your thoughts on Zach Steffen? Because I remember going into the World Cup, we thought he was going to be our guy. And then he didn't even make the roster. You had Ethan Horvath and Sean Johnson, I believe, that made the backups behind Matt Turner. But what are your thoughts on him in this move?
So 2 perspectives. For him, if I put myself in his shoes, probably a good move because he is not performing crazy well in the championship with Middlesbrough. When he was initially signed by City and he backed up for a season, and I think then he went out on loan to Dusseldorf, had a good season with Dusseldorf from what I remember. And I thought they were going to try to parlay that into more success, more, top tier appearances in various leagues in Europe. It hasn't really spun out for him. And then mix that with injuries and some personal issues that he had. I think that's why you end up leaving him off the roster. And it was like, do you bring in 2 top dogs and potentially have some drama in Qatar? Or do you bring in a top dog and you're not going to play the other guy, which is Steph in this case, because we were playing Turner, and you get their 2 guys experience. So from his perspective, I think this is the right move. For us, I don't always love the move back to the MLS from Europe. It's just, I feel like usually when you do that, it's for like a reset button. And it's because things haven't gone right over there. And the Colorado Rapids are hungry in this offseason. They've signed him. I think he'll work out well for them because they got peppered last year. So I think he'll be an upgrade in the back. They've also signed Jordi Mihailovic as well, who is another player that I think is kind of hitting the reset button. Still young enough to make this type of move and then maybe go back overseas, but it wasn't working out as well for him either. I think broadly, the Rapids are looking like they're going to try this year. We're poking them with a stick, and maybe Kroenke's kind of woken up and is going to try to put a little bit of effort into this team this year, which will make for an interesting Western Conference for us because they were nothing last year. I know we didn't play well against them at all, but they were not a good team.
No, they scored a league low 26 goals last year in their 34 regular season games, which is pretty disgusting. So they're going to need a lot more help, and they also gave up 54 goals to having a minus 28 goal differential, second worst in the MLS behind Toronto. So got a lot of work to do. We'll see what they can do there. Another big name, and then we have 2 other a little bit smaller names in my opinion, but one that everybody else should know, Miles Robinson. He's going to FC Cincinnati, 26-year-old American center back. Had been with Atlanta United since 2017. He's in the MLS Best 11 from 2019 and 2021. The MLS Defender of the Year in both of those seasons. In the conversation, did not win it. But then he ruptured his Achilles back in May of 2022, which is an extremely tough thing to come back for, which left him out of the World Cup squad. And then that's how we got Tim Ream to come onto the World Cup squad and had an amazing time. So he'll line up with, in my opinion, his immature, hot-headed U.S. men's national team teammate, Matt Miazga, up in Cincy. Jake, what are your thoughts on that one?
This was a move that I thought Miles was going to take this jump and go over to Europe. It sucks. The timing of his Achilles injury last year was just brutal because I feel like his national team career was flourishing. His club career was going well. And it was his time to make the jump abroad. And you knew he would have suitors. But the injury happens. He misses World Cup. He didn't necessarily knock it out of the park this year, but Atlanta was kind of an up and down team, but obviously a very competitive team. And I think he was a big part of their competitive presence in the back. Him going to Cincy sucks because Cincy was already good. And now they've got, a heck of a defender. I'm sure he'll refine his form this season in such a good team like that. And they also gave him the bag. I mean, he's making a lot of money. It sounds like he had offers from overseas, but nothing could come close to paying him what he's being paid now in Cincy. So for Cincy, an already really, really strong team is getting even stronger in the back. I mean, kudos to them for strengthening there. And then for Miles Robinson, I think your time might have come and gone for the jump overseas, but that's not to say that he won't be considered seriously for the national team. I mean, if he's able to perform, we've shown that we're willing to play those players. So I'm really interested to see how it pans out for him because they already have Miazga, who had a great season last season, despite him being a little bit of an a-hole. But I'll be very, very interested to watch their back line and see how it performs because they kind of got two alphas in the back in very different ways. But man, a scary defensive unit.
Extremely scary. I would say I'd really just hope he does well, especially as we look towards the 2026 World Cup. And I think he's definitely a major part of that. So hopefully he can have a good season, just not against us. So let's hope for that. Another one, Emil Forsberg going to the New York Red Bulls. He's a 32-year-old Swedish attacking midfielder, played with Red Bull Leipzig since 2015. He had 48 goals and 243 appearances. Yeah, that doesn't seem like it's overly that much. He's an attacking midfielder. He's not going to be your main goal guy. He also has 86 Swedish national team caps and 21 goals while he's playing for them there as well. So that's something to keep an eye on when you're looking at for the New York Red Bulls coming up, which I'm not going to be tracking as much now that Tom's on Chicago.
Yeah, actually, I think this one's under the radar a little bit. I mean, I used to watch Forsberg, and he's attracted by a lot of the big clubs because he is such a creative player. And this is back when like Leipzig was just on fire with him and Timo Werner, when Timo Werner wasn't allergic to scoring, and they were really good together. So I think this could be a sneaky, pretty strong signing. And man, the Red Bull also need to kind of throw the kitchen sink at this because last year wasn't great for them either. And they've lost their star in Tom Barlow as well. So, they're going to need some attacking prowess. And I think he's the type of guy that can definitely provide a lot of that. And on that note, aging attackers, Nico Ladero, obviously is known as a Seattle Sounder, and he was a free agent. They did not re-sign him in this coming off season, and he is signed with Orlando City. Again, you're seeing some really, really kind of underperforming teams strengthen, but also some really, really strong teams strengthen. Orlando was great last year, and they're signing a 34-year-old, but a guy that can be an exceptional attacking midfielder for them. And they played a really gritty style of play. And if they can unlock more goals, they're a defensively pretty astute team already. I think they could be an even more dangerous team now with Nico Ladero on the team. From 2016 to 23, 41 goals, 80 assists, and 191 games played. That is a great, great output. So I fear, now another big contender in Orlando putting a nice veteran attacker into the system.
Yeah, I thought that was a great snag by them. Honestly, getting up there a little bit, being 34 years old, but either doing a goal or an assist about 75% of games is pretty impressive, especially in the span of the MLS growing from 2016 to 2023. But two of the things, Jake, that we'll kind of close out with here that surprised me, two U.S. men's national team guys that are actually leaving the MLS and going to Liga MX. So not even just going overseas, but just getting paid to go down south. First one, probably the bigger of the names, at least from last season, is Brandon Vasquez from Cincinnati. Now he's going to CF Monterrey, 25-year-old. It's a $7.5 million transfer fee to go down to Mexico. And he has 26 goals and 12 assists in the last two seasons as a starter, which is only 62 games played. So similar to that, he's also pretty much doing a goal or an assist every game that he's been starting the last 2 years, which is impressive when you think about the team that they just put together up there in Cincy this year. So I think that'll be a big hole for them to fill. And then also Cade Cowell. He's going from the San Jose Earthquakes to Chivas USA. So he's a 20-year-old U.S. men's national team on a $4 million transfer fee. Only 1 goal and 3 assists last season. But as you've been kind of watching him, Jake, he's been an absolute bully on the U.S. men's national team, a guy that you can see get down the left winger and just bully guys. He's not an overly tall guy, just thick and stout. And I think he's got a lot of upside only being 20 years old. And what are your thoughts on them going down to Liga MX? Is that more of you got to now prove yourself, or are those teams are the MLS teams just taking the money that they're given? Like, I just feel like we're not going to hear from these guys for a while.
So two things. They're both dual eligible, technically. They're both Mexican as well. Obviously, Vasquez is a little more native to the eye because of his last name, but Cade Cowell also has Mexican blood. And I do think this is a good move for them. I thought Vasquez might go abroad. Maybe the interest wasn't there and he was going to make more in Mexico, which is I think just fine. I still think I always get tripped up here, but where I think the line is between the MLS and Liga MX on, how competitive and is it a step up or is it, parity? And I do think them even just changing scenery and going to play in Mexico is going to be a unique growth experience. Maybe it's not a huge jump up, right? But at least you're competing with different types of of players you don't always interact with. It's a step outside your comfort zone. And I think there's definitely growth. So I'm not as honestly interested in the Vasquez situation unless he blows up. We've got a pretty backed up depth chart on the striker front right now. And if he is blowing up, great. Have him come challenge. He's one of those guys that had a January camp, turned some heads, and got some looks. But I'm more interested in Cade Cowell, to be honest. I think, 20 years old, still a lot of runway. Wasn't a great output season for him. San Jose was kind of off and on last year as well. So I'm really interested to see how he works out in the Chivas style. We have a good comment here from Kevin that he needs to work on his technical play for sure. And I think, like you said, Kevin, I think Liga MX is the perfect place to help with that. They play a very technical style, a lot more open than we have here in the MLS. So I think I'm excited for him because I'm watching him. Just remember, our seats were right on top of him when San Jose came to St. Louis, especially for the first half. And even though he wasn't producing, he's still really exciting on the ball. You just kind of get this feeling that anything can happen, and he's such a big guy, and you don't really see that for wingers either.
No. And I just hope he gets more minutes. The same thing with that we were kind of talking about earlier. All these young guys for the U.S. men's national team, I'm not really that worried about where they're going as long as they're getting playing time, because I think that's the biggest thing right now is look at Zach Steffen, look where he was in the U.S. men's national team roster and then just missing the World Cup. It's because you go overseas, you don't play and you get stagnant. Your confidence goes down. So as long as he's getting playing time down there, it's fine by me.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, just really quick, you brought it up, Zach Steffen, I think good move for him personally, again, because if you want to get back in this national team, you've got to play, and he's got to somehow supplant Matt Turner. I know Matt Turner isn't necessarily knocking it out either, but at least he's getting a lot of games in the EPL right now, which still that mind boggles me, but I'm obviously very happy for him. So those are some of the bigger transfers we wanted to kind of, bundle up for you all, but just some larger kind of dates to be aware of, because we're kind of in a soccer bit of a hotbed right now with different things going on. On the 12th, January 12th, the AFC Asian Cup is starting. So think about it as Asia's kind of World Cup. That's taking place in Qatar, and then that ends in early February. So I don't know if that impacts us as much. There are definitely some Asian players here in the MLS that I'm sure will be attending. I did not get a list, but I will get to that in AFCON when I talk about that. MLS preseason begins in just 3 days officially. That is crazy. These guys do not get much of a break, man. I feel for them. It's just you're done, and then you're restarting, what feels like a couple weeks later. And then AFCON is also starting on the 13th. So AFCON is Africa's Cup of Nations. So similar to Asian Cup, similar to our Gold Cup, similar to Euros. It's just their kind of continental, big tournament that they participate in that really kind of shows who is the top dog in this continent. So that's the Africa Cup of Nations is taking place in Ivory Coast. Normally, I would have been a little bit more worried about that happening at this time, but Blum did actually not make South Africa's squad, which was a little bit of a shock, a little bit of a surprise. We don't have details as to why, but I think a lot of people put it up to some of the drama that Blum had with some of the coaching staff last year with, is he injured? Is he not injured? Were there games being played by us here at the club? And who was right? Who was wrong? All that to say, I'm glad he's not going. He'll be fresh here. And I think after last season, how it ended for him, I'm glad he gets a little bit of time off and to do a full preseason with the guys. Because remember, he didn't get to do that last year. And then total, if you look at the MLS as a whole, there are only 3 total players going to AFCON from the MLS. I thought there'd be more, but there is not. So those are a couple of the big tournaments going on right now. And then Champions Cup, Justin. We are just on the horizon. Starts February 4th. We don't start then, but the actual Champions Cup starts then.
Yeah, and I mean, so our game, the first one will be at home. If you didn't see it already, or if you didn't get tickets, you can go get it against the Houston Dynamo on February 20th. That's going to be an exciting time, I would say, for a lot of these people. I know we kind of had a little bit turned off last year if you look at the Leagues Cup and how we got bounced so quickly, and then the Open Cup, we didn't really play our best guys. This is not going to be the case with this, especially with this being our first ever game of the season. I think we're going full force on 220, but like you said, the tournament will start on 2/4, and then also the February 8th through the 11th is the U.S. Soccer Annual General Meeting. Could be interesting for U.S. Soccer, I would say, especially when you think about the U.S. Open Cup. I know there's been a lot of things that have been going back and forth on the MLS trying to leave, and U.S. Soccer basically saying, no chance. So I would say we could definitely see some more to come out of that.
Yeah, I agree. And the last two things to say is that there's a CONCACAF Women's Gold Cup for the first time ever that starts in mid-February on the 17th and runs for a month through March 10th. And then finally, the MLS begins, baby, February 21st for the earliest opening of the MLS ever. So we're getting earlier and earlier, squeezing in more and more games, and his legs are getting more and more tired. But I'm all here for it, man. Inject that into the veins. I've missed it, and I know you've missed it as well. But before we get deeper into more of, I think, the CONCACAF Champions League, which we can talk about maybe a little bit further on. But Justin, let's give a shout out to the sponsors that keep us going. These local brands that we're super excited about. I'll start us off. Big news from the Series 6 front. They have actually just moved their HQ, their storefront presence to South City on Watson Road next to Pietro's, if you are familiar with that. They had some great deals on opening day. You might have missed out on those, but you never miss out on anything when you have ball watching as your code. You can get 15% off at checkout, either online at series6company.com and in store if you just tell them ball watching sent you. So go check it out. It's a lot more space. I talked to Sammy about it. She was super thrilled about this place opening up, and a lot bigger of a place to host all of these different lines of apparel they have. And man, they have some cool ones. So I encourage you all to check it out.
This past weekend was their actual opening day, and on January 6th, it was still snowing outside in St. Louis, and there was a line around the corner for people to get in. So people are extremely excited and welcoming her to South City, and we couldn't be more proud to be one of the sponsors. So another one of our sponsors that we love, just got off the phone with them not too long ago, talking about 2024, is Soul Juice. Talking about Luis here, used to be U.S. SLU men's soccer player with me and roommate at the time. You can go to souljuice.com and get 20% off on all Soul Juice using code BALLWATCHING. You can also get it at Deerberg's, Schnucks, Straub's, Sam's, all over St. Louis. Go support Luis. I would say buy some apparel, buy some juice. It's something that we absolutely love, and we're going to be working with him through the entire season on some fun events as well. So keep in mind for that. And then lastly, we cannot thank the pitch enough again for our Hope for the Holidays event. Get to the pitch right across from the stadium. We're 5-6 weeks out from first game that we're going to be having at City Park. You know it's going to be packed then. In the meantime, you can go watch EPL, playoff football for the NFL, Mizzou basketball. I'm not even going to talk about the Billikens unless you want to watch Travis Ford get fired. No. We're currently down 9 at home versus St. Joe's, and I do not understand it. Fire Travis Ford.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for his son to put out some more tweets on his burner accounts today to see how that goes. But yeah, no, not worth watching SLU at the pitch, but everything else, go ahead and definitely go there to watch. So, Justin, let's get into the meat and potatoes. I know we're 30 minutes in, but we've got some big signings to talk through that City has made in just the last couple of weeks. One of them just a couple of days ago. If you look at this title of this episode you're listening to right now, I called it Lutz, Plunders, Scandinavia. A little Viking reference for you all. By the way, if you're listening, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, throw us a like. Throw us a subscribe. Make sure you're in the know for all the episodes we put out. We put out a ton, obviously, during the season, probably looking at over 100 this season, if we're being totally honest. So make sure that you get those right away. Like and subscribe. Comment what you think. We'd love to hear from you all. But back to City. Starting off with number one. This is actually the more recent signing, but I put it first for a reason. So Nicolas Duyur. I put the pronunciation here, Justin, just for you, and I wrote it out in some layman's language. But we signed Duyur just a couple days ago now. He's a 22-year-old left-back Dane. So he's from Denmark, and he's coming over from Danish Superliga, so their first tier. They're current leaders in the league, FC Midtjylland. So he was signed for about $500K in transfer fees. So that would take 500 off our GAM, and Justin, we can come back with what we think, the current live total is. I know we've been working on that on the side, plus some performance incentives. One thing to note here as well on this transfer, you'll see this a lot, a little bit of learning opportunity for the newer folks here, is there's a sell-on clause in his contract. So when we buy him from FC Midtjylland, they have some level of belief that he's going to go on to be a pretty decent player. So what they do is, one of the stipulations in this contract is that there'll be a sell-on clause. So if we go to flip him and sell him to, let's just say he is, he's going to be here through 2026, maybe even 2027 with a contract option. Let's say he wants to go, has a great career here, and he goes to the EPL. We sell him for 10 mil. But there's a 5 or maybe even 10% sell-on clause that goes back to FC Midtjylland. That means they would catch 5 to 10% of whatever the fee that the buying club for him is willing to pay. So if we're selling him to Arsenal for $10 million, they're going to catch 500,000, maybe even $1 million of that if they have a 5 or 10% sell-on clause. So you always like to see that, because I think that means that club has a belief in this player, and that encourages me to have belief in this player. And boy, do we need him.
And I would say, I mean, it's a great idea by them, but it sucks because he's going to retire at City. That man's staying here for 20 years straight. So he can play along the whole left side. I would say that mainly left back, as Jake mentioned, also could play in the left mid. So I think the big thing that we talked about this whole offseason is like, how are we going to fix our flanks? There's your left side right there. We talked about midfielders and everything, and right backs we'll get into here in a little bit as well. But he's under contract through the 2026 MLS season with an option for 2027. Another thing to note for people is that he does require an international spot. So that is something that we have to keep a tally of, and that we can trade for and move along. Every team uses 6 around 8, but you can go up and down depending on what you trade. And a little bit more background on this guy. He's been on the Denmark youth national team caps through all levels, basically from 17 all the way 21, 23. He's logged 24 appearances in the first half of this season, last full season, and in the prior. He said just under 1,000 minutes in each. And why so little?
It was weird.
Why is he not playing more?
So the last 2 seasons, and there was also a loan that I didn't dig too deep into here, but the last 2 seasons he's logged just around 1,000 minutes, about 24 appearances in all competitions. But the season prior, he logged, I think, above 2,000 minutes and made a ton more appearances. So I think there's a mix of injury, and I also, from what I read, left back is a pretty competitive position for FC Midtjylland. So obviously he's 22. They're not throwing him appearances all the time. He's not that age where, he's still have a lot of development, I think, to go. So it was just an interesting one I wanted to put in there. And the reason I put in there is the cap end, the bright note is that just through this season, but remember everyone, this is Europe. They're halfway through their season right now. So he's played 24 times already for them. And that's the same amount of appearances as he logged the last 2 seasons as well. So obviously he's been a proven player already this season for him. He'll come over, probably get a little bit of a break, get integrated into preseason, and get going with the boys. But he's already got half a season in his legs. So talk about lack of breaks. This guy's going to be basically playing from August through October, November, December, potentially, if things go really well for us. So welcome to the U.S. It's going to be a long one.
I know, and I would say there a lot of these things, as you see these signings, Lutz is behind the scenes pulling these strings, and Lutz had great things to say about him. He said here, and quote, "We're excited to add Nicolas to our back line. He's just 22. He has won titles at both youth and senior levels in Denmark, and has gained valuable experience in the Europa and Champions League competitions. His ability to man the left side of the field in our defensive third and final third will be key in our style of play." So that's one of those things that, I mean, Lutz is not saying like, oh, we'll see how he fits as he comes in. It seems like he's going to be pretty much a plug and go, especially like you're saying, yes, it's going to be a longevity thing for him, but he's pretty much mid-season right now.
Yeah, he should be in great form, at least fitness-wise. And then, so secondarily, his partner on the other side of the field now, at least our proposed starting 11, I think probably includes both of these guys, is Thomas Totland. So he was signed. He's a Norwegian. He's 24 years old, but we signed him from Sweden's first division, and it's BK Häcken. So he was also signed for about $500,000. Another, hefty expense, but getting upgrades on your left and right flank in the back, which were both weak points for us last season, where you saw a ton of faces just kind of rotate and revolve. We've got 2 guys now that are legitimate starting options, which you couldn't be more excited about to sign them both for, basically about $1 million. In total haul. So he can play left back as well, and also further more advanced up the field. So common theme here, Justin, we're seeing 2 defenders that are signed that have good one-on-one defending, solid defenders, but also have an ability to carry the ball up the field, serve in crosses, be dangerous, pass, connect with teammates. That's a huge part of this style of play, is being able to get those crosses in, push and defend forward, like we've heard Carnell say time and time again. So these are 2 guys that are just perfect fits into the mold of what we're doing. I'm excited about Totland. I think specifically he's got 2 more years of growth already ahead of who we just talked about in Dewar. But he's also, you put in here, Justin, I love that you put in here, like he's made his way up through the entire ladder. So you can see that growth, year over year with him. So I'm hoping he still has more to go.
Yeah, he also has Norwegian youth national team caps, U18, U20, U21 squads, prior to Haken, he's played 5 professional seasons up in Norway with 3 different clubs, quickly making his way up the ladder. As you mentioned, 2016, he was in the 3rd division. I'm going to go ahead and just try these names anyways, Jake. Fana is Droslag. He had played 10 games played and had 1 goal. So that was just kind of like the beginning of his career. 2017 through 2020, played in the 2nd division for Sundgal and Droslag. Oh, maybe it's the same city. 81 games played, 7 goals, 9 assists. And then 2021, he played for the 1st division. Tomastro Ungorslag. It's got to mean something. They can't all be in the same town. 28 games played, 5 goals, 3 assists. And then in 2022 and 2023, he was with Haken and 44 games played with 1 goal. So he's already logged over 1,500 minutes for BK this season. So like we talked about, 2 guys that are basically going to be a plug and go. We don't need a full preseason. If anything, preseason is going to be them getting used to the guys, the chemistry, which is great that they're already going to be over here for the next month and a half.
And Lutz was waxing poetic about him as well, saying he's excited to bring Tomas to St. Louis after a lot of interest from other European MLS teams, which we did hear about. This was described as a coup from some writers that are in the know for transfers more internationally. He comes to our team with experience at a high level, including playing in both Champions League and Europa League matches this season. Along with experience, he's well-rounded in both the attacking and defending phases. So themes we've already talked about. But again, guys that are young, that have played in high-profile competitions in Europe already, that come with probably a season or 2 of top-level professional experience, and that are capable of both attacking and defending. I mean, what more could you ask for? For me, off-season already, but we already talked about Durkin in a past episode, but between Durkin, Totland, and Dewar, I think we're in A territory, and we'll see how it goes this season. But we talked about positions of need being central midfield and, both left and right back. We've got 3. I mean, we've got significant reinforcements at all three of those areas. So I'm pretty excited. And I think this roster is pretty much settling.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we're going to have a whole lot of more moves to come. I will say we already kind of teased that I'm working on that GAM-TAM calculation to see how much more money we do have, or if any at all. So we'll keep that coming as well. And sorry, Jake, I just kind of zoned out there. I really need to brush up on my Norwegian. Is Droslag just means sports teams. So all 3 of those squads are just like different cities, I'm assuming. But, you try your best while you're alive.
We actually, and Kevin, thanks for the comment. I just saw that come in. By the way, anyone listening, feel free to drop us questions or comments, and we'll definitely be sure to cover them live or, as we get to the end of the show. But Kevin, you bring up a good point. I think the positions of dire need were central midfield and the flanks in the back. So left and right back, starting caliber players, because we have guys that can play it, but is it their best position? Think of a guy like Kyle Hebert. I think he's a better center back than he's a left back. You have guys like Jake Nerwinski and Akil Watts, who kind of like were the flip sides of a coin. We kind of want a guy that's like right in the middle of those 2, but isn't necessarily either of those 2 as a starter. So I was really excited about those, but we keep hearing, we still have a DP slot open. Neither of those 2 are DPs. Is there a way that we could make a big name or just big signing in the winger area? And I think that's because what people are overlooking is that Stroud. I was team Stroud. I like Jared Stroud. He played a crap load of games for us last year. He production-wise kind of fell off a little bit after the first half of the season, but he was a really important player for us. And I wouldn't say that we necessarily have someone that just steps right in and takes those games from him. So is there a way that we make another signing here, especially like in the winger-like department, that could maybe take some of the goal-scoring weight maybe off of a guy like Klaus, assuming we had a full season from him this year? I do think it'd be nice to have, but I'm not waiting on this, because if you look at the numbers, it's a numbers game, man. I mean, we've got 27 out of our 30 players in the senior squad are signed. I'm excluding Pedro and Jensen right now, who are both on loan right now. Jensen could be purchased. There's a purchase option in his loan agreement. It sounds like he's doing pretty well with them as well. So I could see them triggering that. Pedro, I have not heard anything about. So I assume that's not a great thing. But we also haven't signed our super draftees yet. And I'm not going to say we're going to sign McSorley or maybe even Kajima at this point. I think they could probably do more City 2 minutes and keep developing there and learn the style in a more friendly, a lot of minutes format. But we're getting to the very almost like pretty full roster size. So we maybe would have to do some outgoings before we even brought someone in potentially. And we're already fresh out of international spots.
Yeah, and one thing I know, Keith Smith's putting in here that we have a rumored another center mid, but we kind of squashed that earlier today, Jake. Manuel Veth on Twitter kind of reported that originally we were interested in Leonardo da Silva Lopez, but sources told him that. So basically we were interested back in the fall, but once we signed Chris Durkin, that kind of got squashed. So that one is a little bit of an older news coming back up now. But in my opinion, Jake, you talking about people that need to help Joao Klaus score goals. We got Nico, we got Sam. If you're really worried about it, put my man Celio in the game. That man's about to have a blowout year. I have a lot of faith in that guy. If you're talking about taking guys one-on-one, he probably doesn't have the best finishing ability, but he'll create more chances and give more assists this season. Just give him the minutes.
And let's not forget who we are either. I like that point of view because we wouldn't have even expected a lot of the guys that became big players for us last season to even be featuring at all at this point last year. Think about a guy like Kyle Hebert. I don't even think he was signed yet to a first-team contract. Think about Miggy Perez, who was such a big part of the very beginning part of the season. Think about Dinaran. There's a lot of these faces just needed minutes to make a breakthrough and tremendously increase their value to us. So I don't think we're the team that's just going to keep buying players and filling spots of need. We might give some players some time to see if they can grow into those roles. And I think it gives us flexibility too. Like there's a secondary window as well. If we need to splash, we have a little bit of wiggle room.
I mean, think about what Joao Klaus did, and then the minimal amount of games that he had. We get a full season out of him. He's looking at a possible golden boot right there. And then you add that in. We're going to have a ton of guys that are coming in off the bench. You look at Sam Adeniran, Rasmus Alm, get a full season out of him as well. We got Indy that you can throw in there, AZ, Celia. We have plenty of guys. We have Thor. We can have plenty of guys that can be attacking these flanks. It's about who's going to be hot and who's going to be able to finish. And I think we're going to be covering that in much more depth as we look at the full season in the next couple episodes before we get to our preview of the Houston Dynamo game.
Yeah. And I agree to what you're saying, Justin, and Kevin agree with you as well in the comments. I could see Nico moving to the wing to get some more minutes, especially if they're not doing a second striker system with him sitting behind Klaus. I think he could be a good player on the wing as well. And I think he is one that you probably gonna have to include in your 11. It's a matter of if we're playing a 4-4-2 and he's sitting under Klaus, or if he's playing on the wing in like a 4-3-3 or something like that, or 4-2-3-1. So I think either way, you got to find space for Nico to be on the field, because I think him and Klaus, regardless of positioning, have great chemistry. Yeah, absolutely. So last thing, just kind of a reminder for you all, is preseason is basically almost here. Jan 20, we were supposed to have a game against Nashville. That got pushed to the 26th, but the 26th we were supposed to play Columbus, and that got canceled outright because Columbus was playing basically up until like 4 weeks ago. So they were taking a little bit longer of a break. So we basically just canceled the Columbus game, put the Nashville game in that slot. So on the 20th, we're having our first game. It's actually an intra-squad scrimmage. But it's going to be, dude, I would pay to watch that. How cool would that be to see like 11 and 11 all city players? I think that'd be so much fun to watch, but obviously you're not going to be able to watch that. That'll be happening down in Florida in Port St. Lucie. Did we figure out how to pronounce that, Justin? I have no idea.
Why are you asking me for pronunciation?
Okay,
did you just see what happened with the whole Denmark thing?
It's a new year, but it's the same meme, man. I don't know why I'm asking those questions. But
that's not on my New Year resolutions.
Jan 26, we're taking on Nashville in Florida before we head on over west to Coachella. And we're going to go look at playing the Galaxy on February 3rd. February 7th, we'll take on LAFC, so the other LA team. And then February 10th, we'll play New York Red Bulls. And we will then head home on February 15th for a closed-door scrimmage against Louisville City. And then, dude, we're right there. Feb 20 is our first competitive CONCACAF Champions Cup game, and we are right back into the thick of it, because a couple days later, our MLS campaign opens. So guys, girls, moms, dads, we are here. Like, it's going to be here before you know it. I'm saying a month, but like a month flies by like that right now. So we're hot on the heels of this year.
It's going to be insane how quickly it gets here. I'm going to be in busy season. I feel like I'm going to blink and we're going to be outside standing in the cold on February 20th, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to have a frozen Irish coffee in my hand anyways. So get to the pitch, order Soul Juice, get Series 6 South City. Thank you all for joining. This has been a fun one, Jake. It's kind of nice when we don't have like the preview recap, kind of split it up. So as everybody that's listening, feel free to DM us as you have things that'll come up. We're going to talk about the Champions Cup coming up as well, and the breakdown of all of that. And we're going to go through the whole team, and we're going to go through the whole season. But if there's anything specific you want us to talk about, feel free to reach out.
Amen. Well, thank you all for listening. Welcome back to Ball Watching 2024. This is going to be a heck of a season. We're glad you're all along for the ride, and you can count on us to be your one-stop shop for all City news for the next year, at least. So thank you all again for hopping on, and I hope everyone has a fantastic week. All for City.
All for City.